Alright, test, test, test. So you guys should be able to hear me. So I'm here on the iPad, and we're just going to throw open uniform, and I'm just going to just begin going over the program as if I'm proficient with it, just talking about my experience with it. It won't be 100% accurate, and it won't be useful for anyone except for certain people, but this is just my experience with uniform, just saying that before I get in here and start screwing up. Alright, so I've read the manual and I got some information from it, but mainly I've been poring over all the tweets on Pablo's Twitter and all the other people who are fans of Uniform and any content that they make. So, really, any information I have is because of them. So, we see that when the program starts off, it tells us to draw a box to make our viewport. So, I'll just do that. And we'll start off just using, let's start off with a low poly quad sphere or a polymesh. So we see here that we are using a polymesh. A polymesh can also be known in the outliner here. If we open the outliner, it'll tell us that it's a polymesh. You're probably like wondering, hey, what's all this talk about a polymesh? What does that mean? Well, if we go under scene, there's an option to convert, and you can convert from polymesh to geomesh to subdiv geomesh to image. If you're going through like a multi-res workflow, you want to convert it to a subdiv geomesh. If you're working with a dynamic mesh workflow, you want to keep it as a geomesh. If you're dealing with mesh and UVs, you want to keep it as a polymesh. And that is the difference between these three meshes. I think it's the most important thing with this program because there's things you can do to a polymesh that you cannot do to a geomesh. And just to show that, let's pretend like we have symmetry. All right, so I'm going to go under object and we're going to enable symmetry, and we're just going to go under extrude. Notice that when I go under extrude, we are now in this wireframe preview mode. If we jump over to a different brush like move, we now see that we have points showing, which is a difference from the way things were before, but that's just because we are in a poly mesh. We see on the side that we have little quick options we can grab, like for example, if we use select, we can actually drag a box and close it to select just an area, and then we can use the move brush on just that particular area. So, and we can't move any of the areas that aren't actually selected. So that's one way to get a very specific selection. But if we draw a box up or to the back, we can deselect or invert our selection. So you see that now we have nothing selected. So when I touch the screen, I'm not doing anything. And now I'm able to basically touch and move and navigate. And, in the future, I hope to have a webcam showing so that way you guys can see what I'm up to. But we're just basically sculpting, just kind of shaping a head, just pretending we're sculptors, just having fun with the application, just staying in poly mesh mode, which means that we're making mesh changing operations, like kind of like in Blender. If you just have a regular mesh, this is what we're dealing with. There's no multi-res, there's no subdivision. If we go under surface and we use rebuild, we see that we're generating new UVs, but the mesh's topology never changes. All we're doing is just generating, I don't know, polygon density or something. I don't know. That's the part. These are the mysteries I have to solve with this application. But continuing on, remaining focused, let's go under loop. So if I hold down the Alt button, we see that it activates M2. So when you see M2 activate, just know that I'm pressing Alt on my keyboard. And now we're able to bring a loop in. And if I don't hold Alt, we see that we're able to maneuver and change the loop. And if we shift drag, we see that we're able to bring it in and out. So really one of the first demos that I was playing with in this was, we'll go into Workspace Manager, make a new workspace. Sometimes making a new workspace doesn't work out, but with that knowledge, let us just add a cube. And we're just going to, you see how this cube looks like terrible, right? Like this cube looks atrocious. You know how you fix that shading? The quickest way is to just go under rebuild and just rebuild it. And now the shading looks fine. The mesh is still a poly mesh, as it says down here, meaning that if we go under graph, these options still apply to us. So let's take the form and we're just going to grab it, right? And you're like, yo, that's crazy. I want to constrain it. So let's hold snap Y, and you see that now I've constrained it to the Y axis. That's good. We're going to zoom in, and I'm going to change this over to loop. And let's just hold Alt, and we're just going to add a loop here and add a loop here. And we're just going to slide these around, just make sure we got it where we want it. And then now we want to try rotating it, or we want to try extruding this out. Ignore the shading. The shading just breaks down because we're making mesh changes. So I'm going under extrude. We see that extrude is now what I'm on. If we click and drag, we see that we extrude everything. We don't want that. We're going to hold Alt to draw a region, and now we can extrude just that region. So now we're just extruding, and we're just doing basically what I call the chair demo. We don't want to autosave it all because we're just making a chair. Let's undo with a Control Z. Let's use Alt, and we'll just kind of inset that. And let's undo what we did there. And we're just extruding this out. And of course, we can go back to loop. And if we want, we could hold Alt, not that Alt, and tap these loops to get rid of them. So we have some basic mesh modeling functionality going on in this program. To get the shading right, we will just rebuild it once again, and we see that it looks absolutely atrocious. This is because our seams are terrible. If we look at our UVs are absolutely terrible. Like, these are the worst UVs you've probably ever seen. So now I get to talk to you about UVs. So if we go under Graph and we go under Edit Mesh, we have an option for Mark Seam. And you see that these are the seams on the mesh. If we draw a line out, we mark everything. If we draw a line the opposite way, we unmark everything. And then we can get in and actually start marking things manually if you want to be like really pedantic with how you do your UVs in this application. Like, you can get in and literally be a UV master, which I wasn't planning on being a UV master today, but let's do it, guys. Let's go for the gold. Let's become UV masters. So we are just cutting this and giving us the old serial killer special when it comes to being able to be split open very easily. And we'll put seams around this part. And this is just us working one leg, right? If we go under rebuild and we draw it again, we see that now we get something a little bit more reasonable. But let's say that we actually want this to work out, right? Because maybe the UVs I gave, okay, actually no. I was about to cop out and accept this, but I'm a better UV artist than that. Let's go in here, rebuild again. We see that this thing is still giving me the business, so let's go under rebuild, or let's go back under edit mesh. Not that one, we want to mark seam. Let us just mark around this. You see that marking and unmarking is pretty easy in this application, but it did take me a moment to just kind of get the rhythm of what was being gone for here. And really my goal wasn't to bring you in here and show you how I model a desk. So let me back up and let's just do a rebuild again. And we're just seeing if we can get some better UVs, and we're not. We're getting terrible UVs. So you know what? I'm just going to hack it. And by hack it, I mean we're going to go under mark seam, and we're just going to draw a line, and then we rebuild. We see that we got the desired result. So you're like, yo, a leg on one side's cool, but my tables have 4 legs because that's how they stand up, bro. And I feel you. Let's do that. So we go under layout, we choose symmetrize. Now we see that if we click and drag, it's basically a lot like Mesh Machine, where you're able to click and drag across in order to gesturally do a mirror. So we see that, you know, his idea won out and is now the way that Uniform does mirroring. So let's go back under rebuild, and we rebuild it once more. And now we have 4 legs happening with our chair. But you're like, hey, I want to rest my back against it. So let's get in here, and I want to demonstrate a little bit more about mesh modeling. So let's talk about extrude. Extrude can be fun. We want to hold Alt and paint what we want to select, so that way we can extrude this up. And we're just extruding, and I know the shading just looks terrible. I feel that he really needs an intermediate state where I don't have to go in and mark everything and resharp it, because, you know, I just prefer to work. And this is like kind of a difference between, I guess, Blender and over here. So now I have these faces, you know, let's fix the shading real fast. All right, so now we at least have adequate shading, except it looks terrible. So let us go back under graph, edit mesh, mark seam. We will just mark everything. And then whenever we rebuild, we got UVs that are basically game capable, right? Like, these are those light map UVs. So what we want to do is go under extrude, and I'm going to hold Alt, and we're going to draw a selection here, and we're going to hold Alt, and we're going to draw a selection here, and we're going to talk about something that took me a very long time to learn, and that's freaking how do you delete geometry. So we're going to delete region, right? Because I marked these, that means that when I tap, they're gone. That's it. They're gone, guys. That's it. So you're like, how do you bridge it? Well, look, you click and you drag, all right? But not like that. Let's go ahead and redo. We're going to click and drag, click and drag. Let's try that again. Click and drag, click and drag. Nope. Nope. Click and drag. Let's try that again. Click and drag. And this is something I've just been practicing over and over for me to be able to do in this demonstration is click and drag, click and drag, click and drag. That didn't work. Click and drag, click and drag. You know, such a pen discipline workflow. I have a lot of friends who have given up everything to become only pen users, and so this is part of that road. So let's mark the seams and let us perform a rebuild so we have things looking sane again. And you're like, yeah, but there's no backing on the chair. Let's put some rails. Well, that is why I made it this way. I made it messed up on purpose so that we can get in here and talk about loop, 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 loop. And then we remedially talk about how did we delete faces again. We marked a face. We marked a face. We went over into region to delete. And we got rid of it. Just like that. Just a hole. But up top, where's our shape? So let's go back to extrude. And let's go back to delete region. We'll get rid of that. Let's go back on the graph. We'll choose the bridge fill. And I'm choosing this edge. And then I'm rotating the view down here. Which I know feels really weird. But what's weird is that it works. Alright, so I'm grabbing this. And I'm rotating the view. And we have one more to do. And just like that, we have built a leg manually. And you're like, why would you do this? I'm like, this is part of 3D program mastery. You gotta learn how to do like some basic shapes. At least to me, you gotta be able to do some basic shapes, and you learn how to do some not so basic shapes, and then you're off to the races. But you know, the first part of a 3D program is mastering the 3D program, and then after that is becoming an artist, and you know, becoming artistic and connecting with your artistic side. So, which I've never done. Let's grab this and we'll drag it over to the other side to symmetrize it, and we'll go ahead and rebuild it. So that is my chair. Not the most beautiful chair, not a very respectable chair, but that is my chair. And I thank you all for coming to my TED Talk where we discuss chairs. Now from here I can convert this over to another type of shape like a geomesh, and now the shape won't have the issues that I was dealing with when it comes to UVs. In fact, when I go to rebuild, if I hold shift and I drag, we can choose the polygon density, and then whenever I click and drag, we are actually, let's double check. Okay, so this is still a poly mesh. We want to convert it to a geomesh, and now it has been converted. So now we look at our polygonal density, and now that it has this kind of beat up look to it, we know that we have converted it over to a different type of mesh, which is a geomesh. So now let us start talking about a geomesh. Instead of Xing this view, I'm just going to drag this over and just move over my viewport so I can just drag a whole new window out. And in this whole new window, we're just going to bring out a polysphere. And we don't really need a polysphere, but I do need this window to be like kind of bigger, so I'm stretching it out with my finger. And then we're just repositioning our view so that way we can really, you know, use this application how we need. That's probably the easiest way to position it. So now we're in a whole nother application. I think I'm pressing buttons on the keyboard by accident. I'm not even trying to on the computer itself. So here we have this mesh. I want to talk about one of the latest features, which is deformation. But I guess to really show it, sorry to be so scatterbrained, guys, but we're going to delete this mesh from the outliner, and we're going to use this option to import a mesh to import a quad mesh. And we're now going to talk about quad meshes. I know. So you're looking at this, you're like, how big, how dense is this mesh? Well, this mesh is a poly mesh, so that means if we go under move, we can literally see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4 points, right? You're like, that ain't enough. Dude, I'll get in sculpting programs to sculpt 4 points, and I feel you. We go under layout, we can choose to subdivide. Subdivide, subdivide. But you're like, dude, I can't even see what the hell's going on. This is where the program starts to get weird, right? Because in a program where you're trying to have sanity, right? It's like, how do you see the wireframe? Well, in this case, you have to go over to extrude, right? You have to go over to extrude on this mesh. And then after that, we're now able to see it. But we're only able to see it on one side. So there's like some questionable things with this application. But that doesn't mean I don't love it. It just means I have a lot of questions about this application. So we're going to just draw out our subdivision. This is one way that we could subdivide. But another interesting thing about the polymesh is that we can use modifiers, kind of like in Blender. Like if we go under the evaluator, we see that we can add an evaluator. So we want to add a subdivide evaluator. We can just add subdivisions to this until we get the amount that we want. So maybe we want 5. We will apply the stack. So now these points are real. That means whenever we go into sculpt, we're now sculpting with that present. So the reason that we did all this is so that we can basically focus on this mesh and play with the new simulation tool. So if we go under deform, we see that there's simulation where you can tap on pin. And now we can just grab on this and move it over. And you're like, yo, that's pretty tight, but can you get some control with it? It's like, why, certainly. Sorry, I'll stop doing that voice. So if we hold down select, we can draw a box and just select half of it. You might notice that when I draw a box that there's this lasso inside of it. If I close the shape, the lasso is the selection. If I don't close the shape, the box is the selection. So here you see me dragging to the left to invert it. You see me dragging to the other way to turn it off and on. Vice versa. Like there's a psychology there that I missed in the manual that I should have read and paid more attention to. So I'm not qualified to teach this application at all, but I'm just showing you guys my experience and what I know. So we're still talking about polymeshes today. So we're just going to select this side and we're just going to fold this over. Make a few adjustments. And just like that, we've, cloth sculpted that side. So for this other side, we're just going to drag the opposite way. And I'm just going to select half of it. And we're just going to grab it and also fold it over. Like as if we were kind of making a package. We're just having some fun here. And so from here, we're just going to deselect. We're just going to grab this and we're going to fold this over. And you see that with everything selected, it's just a little weirder. So let's deselect, unselect, and reselect everything. And we'll just fold this over how we need. And we get something like that. And deformation tools are pretty fun. When they were being added to Blender, it was like a really interesting thing, or a really interesting moment, at least to me, even though I never mastered them over on the Blender side. But I do want to take advantage of what Pablo is doing with them over here, because I know that he was always serious about it, and he's definitely going to see this vision all the way through. So this is me just having fun with it on a basic level. So with this mesh, we're able to convert it, right? Like we can go under convert and change this from a polymesh to a geomesh. And by converting it over to a geomesh, now if we go under surface and we do rebuild, we can hold shift to determine how thick the polygons are. And then when we do a rebuild, we now have rebuilt this mesh into a different shape. But let's say we want to keep it together, right? Like let's undo one more. I'm double tapping. It's a polymesh. But this polymesh is 1D. It's like a single-sided polygon. Even though we folded it over, let's add an evaluator and we want to put a shell on it. And the shell is weird until you lower the thickness, and then it's no longer so weird. It actually makes a lot of sense. So now we have our mesh folded over with a shell on it. In fact, we can go back and make modifications to get this exactly how we need and just have this just be present. And it has like all sorts of things inside of it. Like I haven't got to even begin talking about this system here, because we're just having fun here, just talking about it on a different level, approaching it a different way instead of me intimidating and scaring you. Let's undo till we go back a ways. And now that we have this, because it's like a modifier, we're able to work and still adjust this after the fact until we get it just right. So we just want to set this as something acceptable, like so. We'll apply it so now it's real. And all these points is just no way to live, all right? So let's just take this and we're going to convert this over to a geomesh. And now you see that it's a geomesh. But really, we don't want to be a geomesh. We want to be a subdivision geomesh because you saw what happened whenever I remeshed it, kind of dynameshed it. It just didn't work out. So we want to go under surface rebuild now. And we see that instead of it doing the usual rebuild, we can give it a new level and we can give it a new level. And through this little handy thing, you can jump to the previous levels. Like when I saw this, I was like, whoa, I did not know this program. Like when people were saying like, oh, this and that, so right here, I want to move this, but I don't want to touch the piece underneath. So I'm going to go under move and we're just going to check on use geodesic distance, which appears to be working for this. Like I just discovered that earlier today. So, I describe Pablo as a mad genius because I know that the options I need are just not in front of me, but are present. They're present because this guy isn't an idiot. He's not an idiot at all. Um, I'm an idiot. That's why I've been showing the program from my perspective like a dummy. But really, this guy gets it. Like he's onto something. So we just did this example. Let's continue playing with deformation. So I'm just going to move my viewport over, just make another viewport just over here. And, it's kind of fun working like this. I just like being random, and this program supports randomness. And I am completely random. So this program completely speaks to me. So with this sphere, we're just going to hit subdivide, and we're just subdividing this a couple of times, right? And we're just going to lock down our view. So if you're rotating the view, if you touch the camera, you see that you're able to snap your view. And that is how you deal with things. Like sometimes you need to adjust your view, you just snap it. And if you hold this down and you move it with 2 fingers, I believe. Okay, never mind. I'm over here teaching things I don't fully understand. Never mind. I will continue with my guided tour. Let's go under deformation. Let's talk about simulation. My favorite option is extend because when you click and drag, it just clothifies it. That's it. It just turns it to freaking cloth. Like how good is that? All right. What's even better is doing it to a region. So let's select only half and then we clothify it, right? That is the money. A lot of applications are getting this way, but I just haven't found a way to organically put it in my workflow. And so I'm hoping that I will be able to, through this application, just be able to rapidly do these things. But seeing how I'm able to go in and just mask and extend and turn this into a large clothy object that I'm then able to get in here and just start freely sculpting is just amazing. And, I'm showing simulation in the context of these simulation brushes, but really even move that I'm using right now can be affected by simulation through the kernel panel. So we look at this and you're like, dog, that's scary. Well, calm down. Let's look at deformation overlay. Let's turn off use geodesic distance. Geodesic distance. That's just a tongue twister for my Texan tongue, guys. So deformation overlay. We're going to turn on cloth properties and let's just start using it now. So you see that now that I'm moving it, it has a more organic move to it. So we can make move into something very alien, very, very beautiful. All right, you know me, I love grab. I may not be a good sculptor at all, but I love a good grab. That's one thing me and Donald Trump have in common is we'll grab. But not really, not really. I'm not a grabber in real life, all right, despite what newspapers will say. Just playing. But we're just pulling this out and we're just having fun with these cloth properties, all right? And you're like, that's pretty throwed. But what does that really mean? Well, let's go over and make another shape. I'm sorry to be showing you all the program so schizophrenically, all right? But let's subdivide and we are just going to just put a few spans on this, just really give it some density, and people are going to keep giving me updates on things I really just need to move on from. Another thing I also want to show is shape keys, but we'll come back to that. Let's continue on with where we are. So here I'm using transform, right? Transform is just how you move things around. Well, we could take transform and we can also put simulation, get cloth involved, and let's just have this break down into clothness. Maybe. Actually, it looks like it's not so easy. Look, we could actually put a mesh here as the floor, and then this example will actually work out the way I want. So let's make it work out the way that I want. So mesh, grid. Let's go to our outliner, and, that's my grid. Hi, grid. Didn't want you to be weird, but like I locked your transform by pressing a modifier key, so it looks like I was able to make it. All right, and so we're just moving this plane, even though we are screwing up our transform. Our transform's getting weird, but we are, going back to our sphere. Look, we can just hold this button and just tap. We can also hold tab and just tap the object that we need. So there are quick ways to get around that I'm still learning because I'm a complete idiot. But now that we have this, we can now move this into this object, right? And you're like, that's cool, but what can you do with that? I'm like, all right, let's go under this. We will turn on scene collision and we'll choose bait collider from unselected. What does this mean? Well, now it means that I should be able to move this object through this object. So let's try this again. And under the evaluator, we're just going to select the right object. Okay, so this is a geo mesh. We want to convert it over to a poly mesh, all right? Because we're not hacks. We know better. And we want to convert it into a poly mesh. Sorry, being a double idiot. We want to give it a shell. And we can't send it negative. I don't like that part. But we do want to rebuild it just so we have some better shading going on. And now when we go back to this mesh and we choose transform and we go under it, we can choose to clear the scene collider, bake it, and now let's try it again. And that should have had us actually colliding with the floor in an interesting way. So now I'm actually curious on why it didn't work. So we're going back into this mesh. We see our geometry on the other side. We want to subdivide it a couple of times. Not symmetrize, we want subdivide. So subdivide, subdivide, and we're outie. We're done with that mesh. We don't want to talk about it no more. What we do want to talk about is this mesh and why it won't activate cloth properties. So let's move it up top. Let's try this once more. We'll reset. Simulation. Cloth properties. Scene collision. Self collision. Okay, so it's telling us that we need to bake it up top. So let's do that. And they're just not going to let us get anywhere with it. So I am just going to abandon this. But before that, I'm going to convert this back to a geo mesh and try it one more time because I just can't let this tutorial defeat me. These are things I play with on the couch. And now it's making me look like my time on the couch has just been wasted. But I joke, of course. Let's try selecting only half. And we have that, but we don't have it colliding. So we are just going to move past that. My apologies for wasting your time. Let's move on to the next example, and that is cutting. So we have a quad, right? This is a quad shape. If we go in and we extrude and we look at what it's giving us, we see that, there's only really 4 points here, and that's because, we haven't subdivided it to give us any additional geometry. So this program has a lot in common with the way that Blender used to be, meaning that if you cut things away, you have to fill it in. Like you can't just have ingons on the mesh anymore. Like that's a Blender thing. So over here, we're just going to go under layout and we're just going to hit this option called trim layout. And trim layout, strangely, will let you just cut. It'll just let you cut. I know, it's the craziest thing, but I didn't know that you could actually do that. And you see that it gets a little weird because of what I'm doing. But we're just going to continue on through this anyway. So actually, let's try converting this over to a poly mesh. And then from here, we're going to try the same thing again. And we'll do some more cutting. And this is how you basically trim a mesh, basically. Something I did not know. I mean, there's probably other better ways to do it, but this is the way that I discovered that you do it. And you see that, this extrusion did not go through. So let us just perform a rebuild. Let's perform a conversion to convert this to something a little less demonic. And then we can convert it back. Oh, all right. Looks like we were lucky before, and now we pressed our luck. So let us convert it back to a geomesh. And then from here, perform a rebuild. So we have all these compromised edges. I'm going to convert this back over to a polymesh just so I can go in and attempt to extrude this, but we see that that's not going to happen. So let's add an evaluator of shell just to see if perhaps we can extrude it like so. And let's apply that. Let us convert it over to a geomesh. So now it's a geomesh. Let's give it a rebuild or attempted rebuild, and we see that, let's just grab something like move and just attempt to smooth it. And we're getting somewhere a little bit with it. I mean, I think there's some holes in the mesh, or at the very least, something very weird happening with select here. Don't trust it. And we'll just get rid of that selection. Selection is one of those things that can really bum you out in this program, especially if you don't understand it. So that's kind of why I've been emphasizing on it so much, is because when you're in these different states, you don't understand what's happening with your select because it's just not there. So we still have move, turning things to cloth. So we see that, the moment we start transforming this, we are turning this into a cloth object. So this is one of the things I do love doing in this application. It's just converting objects to cloth as you touch them. Like, this is just so nuts to me. And one of the reasons that I do love this program, like, the more that we understand about it, the better of a time that we'll have using it. So, I know that you're probably like, hey, do something cool. And it's like, I know. But this video today is just about us getting a basic understanding of the application, what we're dealing with. So we're going to add a quad sphere at a high poly, and we are going to just subdivide it a couple of times. This way we're subdividing doesn't add levels. That's all we're doing when we're subdividing it like that. We're just literally subdividing the mesh. I want to talk about layers. There's a type of layer you can add here called canvas displacement, and this pertains to whenever you're making mesh changes, right? So let's go to the formula. Let's choose transform, scene transform, and before anything, we want to go ahead and just reset it. So that way we can hold select and just grab half of this. And with half of it, we're just going to grab the X dot and scale it in, and we're just going to flatten half of it. And that's it. That's all we're doing. And we're just going to grab the other half. You can tell I'm still very new to selection because I'm still screwing up with it all the time. And we're just going to bring this in. So thank you for bearing with me, but just know that I'm testing myself with this. Like, over time, I hope to have the perfect uniform video, but I see that there is no real uniform content, and I'm really interested in this app and where it goes, especially because there's not a monthly subscription coming with it. So we're just scaling it down, and let's even do a little symmetrization. We'll symmetrize over to the other side. Maybe we won't, but let's look at what we have. So now we have our blend shape showing all that we are doing here. Another thing I also want to talk about is colorization. All right, because coloring can be done via you just texturing it and having it on a color layer, like on our base layer. But we can also mess with references, right? Like, reference colors is just you specifying a color and then referring to it later. So we'll just make a few colors just to refer to them later. Yellow, green, blue. And what this means is, under layers, if we add layer and we choose something like fill color, or let's see, reference fill color, we're now referencing our fill color, and we could just choose it from here. And that means that anytime you go into references and you change your fill color as you're working because you feel differently about your model, it will update there. And that's a really interesting way to work. Like, this is me really starting to understand kind of what Pablo is going for with this application, trying to get on his wavelength. So we'll go back to canvas displacement, and I want to try to see if we can fit a little more displacement here. So I'm going to go under transform, move, and we're just going to try painting selection. Let's try that again. Let's try it again without the gizmo. The gizmo keeps messing me up. Not used to it being present. And we can just bring this in. And this is based on another demo off of Twitter. Like everything I'm doing is based on me like monkey see, monkey do, which is kind of the way that I've always expected 3D education to be. But a lot of comments about, hey, why don't you do this real time? Where's the real time? Real time, real time, has shown me that people are actually very used now to the luxury of just getting it immediately. So we're not able to work that way because of the way that we're working. All right, so if we wanted to, we could just merge down. Can we merge down? Well, we don't want to do that, but it looks like we're not able. Okay, and also we are causing a disaster on the other side, so we may want to undo that. In fact, what we can do is tap on it to make it active, and from here, if we go under surface and color, we can actually paint out what we don't want to be affected. So a common trick in this sort of stuff is what's called a layer trick. So I'm just kind of showing just a alternate way around it, but we don't want to paint all the way through. So we're just looking at this, looking for the option that lets us cut all the way through. Draw mode, idle, fit sphere, action camera, raycast. And I have to admit, a lot of time I come in here, I'm often stunned by the amount of options, but I know that that is because he is trying to deal with a large amount of people. So let's say we wanted to apply all this, like we want to keep this, right? Like I want to keep this. I'm not trying to get weird with this, so we're just going to convert it to a geomesh. Maybe we convert it into a polymesh. Ooh, we don't do that. Let's try converting it into a subdiv mesh. All right, nope. I'm just seeing if there's any way you can just hardcore apply everything. So we just delete this layer. Um, let's merge down. All right, so we collapsed it, meaning we can now go here on the other side and symmetrize and take it over to the other side, finally getting us something logical. And we're just going to transform and just scale this in like so. And, you know, too much transform takes away what we're going for here, but still, we're just having fun here. And with that, we now have, you know, just we're just messing around with transform. So another thing I want to talk about is selection or masking, because I said previously that there was no masking, and that's incorrect. So because this mesh is what's called a geomesh, that means that our selection is going to look like that. You're like, what selection? Well, if we hold this circle, we can change our render style, and we can actually change this over to a render style that will show us what we're getting whenever we're dealing with our masking. So now that we have it shaded like so, we're just going to subdivide, and let's go ahead and just try to move again. And you see how these bands are showing. That is my mask. We get rid of it, we redraw our mask, that is our mask. You're like, but I want to see it more clear than that. Let's find the right shading mode to display that. Now we have it showing. So for some reason, once you take it below, I thought that there was an option here that would show the masking or something under override, but that's a whole nother topic. So now that we have that, we can just get in here and we can move and convert half of this to be a brain. We're just jiggling a brain, and the other half is just not masked. So just letting you know, versus if we have like a poly mesh, right? Like if we add a new object from here, we want to add a sphere that's a poly mesh, right? And we move this over, we see that there's a difference between masking on this and masking on this. In fact, let's demonstrate the same way, just so I really get this lesson clear. Because if you walk away and you're like, yo, dog, I'm a masking master, then I'm on to something. Because, dude, I was really getting frustrated with this, because masking is like the fundamental of an application, right? So we look at this, let's take it up to, I don't know, here. We see that it's just dotted line. So once we're near the center of this, it's a dotted line. We go to this one, and we mask near the center with the dot of, how we display our action here. And we just want to, mirror this to the other side just so we're the same way as before. I'm just showing you how masking visually changes because there's just no way to know this in advance. So we're just going to grab it with move and just pull this in till we get something reminiscent of how this program makes me feel inside. Like I just want to go just playing, but we're just having fun here. We're just having fun talking about uniform casually. But now that we've gone this far, it's like, dude, I understand the difference between a poly mesh and a geo mesh. And I'm like, do you? Do you? Do you? All right, because if you do, then we can move on. So when I had a buddy hanging out yesterday, I was trying to show him the sandwich demo, but I screwed up because I'm a failure. And that's where you subdivide, right? You look at it flat, and then you choose transform. You select half, and you just scale it out, right? A woman doesn't make me a lot of sandwiches, so I don't know what sandwiches look like, but we're just making up a sandwich. So now that we have it drawn out that way, we're going to select half of it this way, and we'll bring this dot in just to scale that down. And that is our bread, and this is based on a demo off of Pablo's Twitter. Just letting y'all know, I'm not trying to take credit and be like, I'm so great or anything like that. Like, literally, credit is due where it goes. So this is a geomesh, meaning that after I set up how much I want my poly to be, when I draw, it's going to look a little beat up. I mean, if I didn't want it so beat up, I'd make it finer, so I get something like that. But, I can't, just because I can't read the poly count doesn't mean I am still willing to go super high poly, because this thing will send me straight to the desktop. So with this shape, we could talk about using object symmetry, where we get these dots and we could choose, left, right to symmetrize, and we're done. We can just go to the next tool and we're out. But also, let's talk about our origin. Understanding object origin or origin somewhere inappropriate. If we just tap on our object, it'll recalculate it. I don't know how it works, but it just calculates it. So, we are just calculate like on volume. If I hold this button down, and then it's hold on scene origin. Scene origin is the other option, and with that, we now have our symmetry correct. So that doesn't mean anything because we are moving on to the next shape that we're adding, which is a quad. And with our quad, we are going to transform it by rotating it and bringing it up. And, you see at the bottom that this is a poly mesh. And because it's a poly mesh, that means that we can get in here and have some fun with this. On a poly mesh level, I mean. So let's get in here and let's subdivide. And we see that we got a little bit of subdivision happening here. Maybe one more level of subdivision, really just show it who's boss. So let's get under transformer, and we want to scale this, but we want to select the right part of the mesh so we can actually scale it. So selection's always important. Like, I can't tell you how I was exiting this program because I wasn't aware of my selection. So Pablo, if you care at all, if you believe in a God or you care at all, just hear me out on that. Like, look, when a man has no selection, when the man's brush is ineffective because of selection-based issues, you got to tell him. And that's what I think about when I use this program. Like, I'm telling you, the more I learn it, the more I'm like, aha, it's a reflection inside of myself where I find out that I'm an idiot. All right, so let's duplicate this. And we're just going to move this over just because we're going to be doing duplicate stuff. So let's take this now, and we want to move this through this other mesh. So I'm going to turn on transform, and we are going to turn on simulation, and we're going to turn on cloth constraints or cloth properties and scene collision. And now when we bring it down, we see that we are now laying on top of the mesh. This is what was supposed to happen earlier, but you see that it made me look like a fool. So as I move it around, it's kind of frantic, but we're doing it. We are doing it, guys. And so we're going to just use move. And just like earlier, we are going to grab this and flip this over, but we can't really get that far. All right. And that is because we need to, I don't know, subdivide it again. That's my only answer for everything. If it doesn't work out, subdivide it. So let's go under deformer. Let's go under simulation. Let's grab pen and let's just move this baby over. We also under pen want to turn on scene collision, and we want to bake the collider, and we want to not autosave because autosave is always trying to save some garbage. I'm never proud of any of the work I ever do, ever. Like, I feel like my best work is not yet done. So, as a result, everything is worthless to me. So let us jump over to the next shape. So we will jump over here, and we will just subdivide like so, and let us just transform, and let's deselect our selection. And before we even do that, let's duplicate this because all right, so one of these meshes doesn't need to exist. This one needs to doubly exist. So now we can bring this down like so. And I know this is like really weird, but this is the sandwich demo. This is like part of like program mastery. Like once you're able to get in here and fold over your sandwich and you make your own sandwich and you don't have to ask your girl to make a sandwich for you in uniform, you're good to go. I've taught a man to eat his own sandwich. So let us go under here and let's bake a new scene collider, and we're just going to bring this down, and you see that now it lays on top of everything. So this program, it just speaks to me. Like I'm over here eating the battery alive, guys. But it doesn't matter. You can't stop me. All right. So now from here, let's go ahead and try the next piece because the next piece will eat me alive. I screwed up every time I've ever tried to do this one. We'll just bring in another quad. And let's just transform. We will rotate this. And let's see, I'm holding Alt or Control or Shift or... Let's see, does any of these... Alright, let's see, transform is all weird, so I gotta reset it. Then if I hold Alt or Command or Shift, none of those will set it up. So we're just scaling it up. And we can handle this a couple of different ways. I'm just going to subdivide, and let's look at it underneath. For some reason, we can only see it underneath or on one side for some reason. It's like kind of weird how things can get in this application. I'm going to just put a couple of loops just for sanity's sake, and then we can go on with subdividing. Let's go back one more phase, and let's loop it one more time. I know, completely inaccurate looping, like a loser. I know, I'm slumming it over here, guys. So we are going to just, from here, go back to subdivide, and we'll add our subdivisions. And for this piece, we will give it the evaluator of shell, so that way we're evaluating it as if it has shell. And then we can go to transform, and we're just bringing it down to just have it collide. But to have it collide, we need to give it cloth properties, we need to give it scene collision, we need to bake a collider, and we need to enable simulation. And that's as far as I've gotten. Like some of these other ones I know are freaking marvelous. I just haven't taken the time to get to know them like as systems. In fact, I just learned something today, just now, about what I'm able to get away with when it comes to these shapes and their modifiers. In fact, rotating it around and watching it get weird in the air, hey, that'll put a smile on your face. And my goal is literally to be good at this program and just be watching shows on the couch and just be productive. I know it's a stupid dream, but it's my dream. And so all of our pieces we have, we need to put a shell on them. And surely there's a way where we can select multiple meshes all at the same time. And I'm sure there is. I'm sure there is. So let's jump to this mesh. We will just give this a little bit of solidification. And before I get out of here, on this part, I want to come back and do something more serious than make sandwiches with you guys. But I figured this would be a fun demo, like in case you picked up the application or you have the application, like, hey, fire that baby up on the iPad, make yourself a sandwich. Um, you won't regret it unless you are the regrettable type. So we have our sandwich, we're just working on it. So before I get out of here, because I see the video length and it's just so hard to not let a video get long. Like, I just don't know what to do about that. Like, I'm going to start speeding up videos, talking over them, and y'all are going to hate me. But let us just draw another box, and we're just going to talk about retopology, all right? Because a large part of mesh creation, and especially hard surfaces, sculpting a concept mesh, retopologizing the pieces, solidifying them, giving them hard edges, making them contour with each other, and then that is the hard surface mesh, right? Like, that's like hard surface 101. So let's get in here, and we are going to convert this over to a geomesh immediately, just so we can give this, we'll start off giving it a low density. That way I can just get in here and smooth it. And if Pablo's watching, he's like, "You idiot! You could have smoothed it 800 other ways." We'll now give it something denser, and let's go under. We didn't even talk about sculpting today. That's how screwed up I am with this application. Like, I am the worst tutorial maker ever, unless you think I'm a great tutorial maker, in which case, do let me know. I try my best. Like, I've been rehearsing this and practicing it, and I'm like, ooh, I'll show them like this, and then when you get on camera, all your plans fall apart. It's like giving a tutorial to God. Um, he'll never accept it. He's like, dude, I made everything. You're over. He snaps his fingers, and you're dust. So we are going to just rebuild our details. Y'all are going to start thinking I'm turning into Aramis with all these religious references. It's because I've been doing so many things involving religion and like reading books where it's like religious based. Not that I'm religious or anything. I'm not. I'm just a regular goofball, not a religious one. So we have this shape, right? All I did was just create like a transition on the surface, just so we have something to go off of. So look, here's how they want you to retopple in this program. So I have a geomesh. We're going to add a mesh. We're going to add, actually, we're going to add a retopo quad. We're going to add a single quad. We've added a quad, right? That quad's a polymesh. What does that mean? It means that if we go under extrude, we should be able to see it, but we can't see it, right? Because we need to go under override. And if we enable retopology as an override, we now have it, right? But let's turn that off for a moment so we can just talk about how these overrides activate based on the tool that you're in. I added a quad, and you can't really tell that because it's under this bastard. So it's like hidden, right? You're like, dude, did you add a quad? I'm like, hell yeah, I added a quad. So look, if we go under graph and we go under retopo and we tap on polybuild, now you see that under override, we don't need any of that because polybuild will put you in that mode. Now, if we activate the retopology override, it will leave us in retopology even when we cross over into other tools like grab and transform, and it just gets crazy. So just be aware of it. That's all I'm saying there. Sorry if that's confusing. It's more confusing when you're not aware of that happening. So with polybuild, we see that we're able to just get in here and build polys. And if it looks like it's easy and intuitive, thank you. Thank you very much. That is me being a salesman. This thing required a bit of practice to get acquainted with, but now that I'm acquainted with it, me and it are friends. We know each other. We call each other on the phone, and we're like, hey, what you doing? Not you. Just playing. I'm just talking smack here. But as you see, we're getting in here and we're making pieces, right? And you're like, yo, you're making it quad by quad. It's kind of slow. Well, I mean, there's faster ways. Like, for example, because I got Cozy Blanket, which is another application made by these same people, I can literally draw like that, and that also works. And you can really start making some really nice progress in that way. But me personally, I like the default option that's like kind of built into the program, because if you get it and you don't have Cozy Blanket, I don't want to shame you for that. So notice that now I jumped over to Move from Polybuild. Polybuild automatically has you in this Retopo view, but Move doesn't. Move has us in the regular old Move view, but we're in Retopo mode and we're on a Retopo mesh, right? You get what I'm saying? So what that means is that if we go over override and we turn on retopology, we now have that. And even though it's not like the most intuitive, it's better. So let's just hit reset because we have a bunch of cloth stuff on, and that's just going to make it weird for what we're trying to do. But we're just building a retopo mesh. Now, I'm not saying this is how you're supposed to work. I'm just saying this is how I figured out that I'm supposed to work. Like when I figured out how I can make plates, I was like, oh my God, I could do a whole character here. Because what is a character? Then a bunch of plates and a little kit bash and building up forms and cutting them out, you know. So all the pieces I need to make a character, I think I actually have them now. So, you know, I'm going to sit down and try. I've been doing recording tests where I've been recording myself making little characters. I'll probably post some of those too. But we have our shape right now. The thing is that on a topological level, because you're talking with MX, topo jerk, this topo will subdivide terribly, meaning that this will turn into an arc, and so forth. So we want to place reinforcement loops on all the edges, like so. Now, if you know me from Blender, you know that I do not like reinforcement edges circumnavigating the entire freaking form. That's what we call like not good. So, you know, I'm just holding shift and we're just kind of smoothing some points just to kind of relax it a little bit. But really, we're just, I mean, to me, it looks like we're playing with a point cloud here. We go back over here and, you know, I don't even know if there's a option for us to move a specific point. Um, you know what? I never really thought about that, but there's no option to move a specific point. And me, I am pretty pointed like that, aren't I? Where I like to get particular with the point. Like, look, being able to move a point like this, though, grab is the king of brushes. It is. This, if you have a good grab, I'm there. So if you ever wonder what's the difference between this and Nomad for me, Nomad's grab or move is okay, but this grab is Lordy grab, you know, Daddy grab. Sorry to say. Let's go back to outliner. We're selecting our right mesh, and we just want to be able to see it, but we're not able to see it because we no longer have the retopology override anymore. So, you know, it gets a little weird in the process of retopoing, but just like that, we have retopoed this mesh, right? Like if we go under loop, um, we should be able to slide individual edge loops where we need, but really I would like to be able to slide a specific edge loop, like just one edge. I know that Alt will dissolve an edge, which we do not want, and the other one will perform a, let's see, inflate, dissolve. All right, so there's not an option for us to just, never mind. So here we want to transition this into a hard part, right? And we could use our old buddy, Shell, and tell me if you see what's wrong with Shell. Shell will swell until you need it to go the other direction. So I can't get Shell to pop out the opposite direction. I can't tell what normals are, so I can flip normals or anything like that here either. So as a result, we have to think about this differently. But have no fear, extrude is the most basic thing that you learn in Blender, right? And here is no exception. We extrude, we're done. Let's get out of this retopo view. So we're looking at the mesh like peer again. And let's tap on loop and we will just add a few loops. Now you're like, yo, MX, that took forever. It's because I've been teaching you guys. Look, if I wasn't having to teach you, I'd be just dashing through this thing. Like I'm telling you, this thing, once you get proficient, it's actually not that bad. Like, but who knows? Maybe you're buying ZBrush for a kidney a month, and you have kidneys to give out. Only have 2 kidneys, and ZBrush can't have either of them. So let's continue on. We're going to go back to outliner. We're going to enable our shape. And so now we have the shape sitting on top. Well, we want to convert this into a subdiv geomesh, unlike before. So right now it looks terrible on the first level, but let us new level, new level, new level. And as we're jumping through these levels, we're holding our shape together, and our mesh still has like a nice finish to it. compared to what we would have got had we been sculpting it up through the levels. And we can still take this thing down all the way to level 0, where we can take this and convert it back over into a poly mesh, where we can go back in, look at it through loop mode, and still get to work on this if we have to make modifications of this. So I've kind of shown you how mesh modeling works, which I think is a strange angle. But I'm a modeler, right? So of course I'm going to not be talking about sculpting, I'm going to be talking about modeling. But let's expand on that, talking about modeling and sculpting, because I'm a big fan of poly sculpting, which is where you do a little modeling, you do a little sculpting, you model, you sculpt. So we have our mesh. We're going to go under object, and we're going to choose local axis evaluation, local axis symmetry of X. And we're just going to get rid of that. And now we have, actually we aren't even able to see our mesh here. Let's go and tap on extrude. And now we are in here looking at our mesh. So we want to extrude this. In fact, what if you didn't want all these face groups? Like, in fact, I want to subdivide it first, and then we'll go under extrude. And I want to basically grab these, and we're just going to extrude them inwards. And let's just get weird with it, where we use move. And we just start sculpting. I mean, we're not trying to make anything in particular. I just want to show you guys how I've been using this program like a loser. Like, I know you're like, yo, I'm gonna get in here at a high mesh and get real high, and get dense with it. It's like, yeah, no, bro. But me, I still remember that this thing's based off of a game engine, and that the fact that I keep forgetting that is a testament to how awesome this application is. So, look, let's go back over to extrude, and we're just gonna grab this, and let's just inset it, and then extrude it, and then go back over to move. And I actually, this is the most I've done in regards to this in a demo test set. So you're just kind of watching just raw MX live, just kind of be in here with a poly mesh, live with a poly mesh. All right, so if I need to focus, I can just tap on view node focus. Your program will probably have this in the bottom corner, but because I'm left-handed, I have it in the right place. And if Pablo's left-handed, then that's probably why I like him so much, because I can tell that this program didn't disrespect left-handed people. Like, there's some video games where I'll play it and it will just literally be insulting you because you're left-handed, and that stuff will make me return a game super fast. Like, hey, that's the only joke I don't laugh at, is when right-handed people laugh at left-handed people. Unless it's the other way around, then I laugh very heartily. But that's just what it means to be on the left, guys. They call me a lefty, and they don't even know I'm super left. I'm like so left that if my political candidate isn't left-handed, I'm not even trying to hear him out. Right-handed people, just can't trust them. So we're just having fun here. We're sculpting, dissing on right-handed people, usual Thursday stuff. Sorry for making such a long, random, ridiculous video, but I just wanted to give an update on my situation whenever it came to this application. So let's take this. We convert this over to a geomesh. You're like, yo, your shading is terrible. I can't even tell what the hell you're doing, bro. It's like, all right, we hold the sphere, and we drag inside. Sorry, I got lazy. I put my wrist on the screen. The program's like, no. And I must also add, if you, in case you're one of those people that's like, yo, how's the iPad? It's terrible. I hate the pen. They want me to buy the new iPad. I'm probably gonna have to at some point. Only if that pen has a hotkey. If that pen has a single hotkey, I will go buy an iPad right now. But really, since Apple got sued over breaking down their hardware, I feel that we should stick with their old hardware longer than usual, just to evaluate if they are holding up to their end of the covenant. So now I've converted this into kind of a dynamic topo mesh, and we're just being random here. The video is pretty much over. You guys can leave and go do whatever you need. We're going to tap on displays, bring up some, what is this brush called? Square. Okay. And we'll just bring up a little bit of chin, unlike me. My brother says I have a weak chin. That's why I have no brother. Just playing. But my brother do be trying to talk that smack, even though he gets bit by men. All right, real human men bite him, and I make fun of him about it. Like, dude, you were the worst laundromat attendant I've ever heard of. You know, if I worked at a laundromat, no man would bite me because I'm working in a laundromat. So, look, I added some quick eyes. We are going to go under add, and we're just going to choose mesh and quad sphere, and we're just having fun for just a moment, just so I can say that I did something. You see that when transform is bloopy, life is bloopy. We want to get rid of any masking. You know, that time masking showed up like it was supposed to, except for the part where I keep accidentally masking. So let's select the right mesh. We'll go back to move, and we are just having fun here. But, you know, at the very beginning, we established our symmetry, and now we are just working it. We're symmetry in a symmetry world. And, you know, once you have those things in a sculpting application, I think everything else is pretty straightforward. So, you know, I do look forward to getting y'all something that's a little more visual about like what you would do in this application because I got some concepts that I want to run through this thing. I want to come up with a pipeline where I work at the computer, I work at the couch, I work in the bed, I work in the backyard. Everybody's happy. My girl's happy. The cats are happy. You know, my cat wanted to fetch with me the moment I woke up this morning. I was in here in my office at like 4 in the morning playing fetch with this freaking cat, and she was just loving it. She's just bringing back the toy, laying on it. You know, that's her favorite trick is she'll lay on the toy and pretend like she doesn't know where it went. And then she likes it when you interrogate her, right? Like she loves it when I dress up as Batman and I ask her, "Where is it? Where is it?" She just goes, like Peter Griffin, you know. So even my cat has a sense of humor, guys. That's what I'm getting at here. I know I'm always talking about my cat, but it's because I never had a cat before. So we're still mucking around, making this video work, pretending like we're sculptors, all right? Even though we are doing some of the worst work ever here. But I'm over the hour limit, and you know, I should have come in and started working on a project the whole time, but instead I wanted to lay out all this technical information for you guys. But, you know, Move, I'm telling you, Move just speaks to me. Like, I spend so much time just playing with Move, and Move will just bring me back. Like, and the fact that we can draw, retopo, and do everything in this application is just mind blowing to me. I mean, I think I killed it. Okay, I might have killed the application just now. Not even trying to get myself out of it. But yeah, I think I killed it. Okay, so fine. Fine. I killed the application. Dang, I killed the application. Okay. And that's another thing is you can kill the application kind of easy. So it's fun that it lasted so long. But yeah, I'll stop it there for now and I'll apologize for ending this on such a mediocre sculpt and then I'll you know what, I'll continue it from the couch or do one from the couch and then do a proper video where I'm actually just mucking around in this program and not talking because I'm telling you when I stop talking I can get it together. But I will just end it there. Actually, no. Let's try that one more time. Let's pop this baby open. And I want to talk about curves. All right, because look, um, let's add an object. Me personally, I've been trying to figure out how to take draw curve and use it in a way that doesn't involve me being constrained to the mesh because I'm constrained to the mesh and I hate that, right? Like I'm stuck to the mesh and that part just drives me crazy. But if we go down to cloth and we use like line curve, then for this one, we are able to draw a curve off of the mesh, right? And the cool thing is that if we go to deformer, curve, and something like radius, we can click and drag just in the viewport to adjust the radius. If we click and drag on the curve, itself, we can adjust the amount of radius happening on the curve in a particular area. So now we're kind of just adding a little bit of roundness to this curve, right? And even better is we can go into something like move and we could shape this curve. So you're like, okay, that's cool, but what is a curve? Well, if we open the outliner, we see that a curve is a geocurve. So it's another type of object, not one of the objects we can convert things to, but just another type of object that was never discussed. In fact, this whole mesh is around a curve. This whole mesh is around a curve. So that's why I'm not able to grab this part and move it up and keep that part. So if we want to convert this, there's a couple of ways we can do it. The easiest way is to go under scene, convert, and we want to convert this to a poly mesh. Why are we converting it to a poly mesh? Because it's an open mesh. If we go under graph and we choose something like bridge fill, we see that we're now in a wireframe mode, and we see that there's this option called triangle fill hole. So I'm holding that and then just tapping on the edge, and that just filled that. So what about the other side? Well, the other side doesn't really matter, but let's pretend it did. So I'm just filling that, and now that that's done, we can just convert to a geomesh, and then from here we can rebuild with something like that, and we now have our shape. Kind of a little beat up there, but you know what? I'm gonna hit this with a little smooth. Nope, that didn't work either. All right, let's actually go under loop. Let's convert it. Like, I want to fix it. That's the thing. Like, fixing things is almost more interesting to me than just being able to work around it. Because I could be like, hey guys, here's how you work around it. All right, so we want to dissolve, right? So, all right, so maybe something like that. And then we can just move that point inwards. So we get something like that. And we will now convert that back to a geomesh. And we will rebuild. So we'll get something like that for our mesh density. And now we have something a little better for our edges, even though this is kind of a dynamic topo mesh. And as a result, we now can, say transform, right? And we can select a mask all the way around this part. Let's try that again. We will draw a mask all the way around this part. All right, and so the program's making a fool of me. Okay, so we'll draw an inverted mask, and then we'll choose the side that we want to not be masked, just so we can stretch this out. That's all I wanted to do. I guess I have to think opposite of how I would in ZBrush, is what I'm thinking about here. Is these behaviors are slightly different than what we're used to, and you might be wondering, like, how do I keep any sort of precision, right? Because look, if we symmetrize, we see that we were a little bit off. And you're like, well, that's cool, but how do we merge this with the top part? Well, we take this poly mesh, right? And if we choose to merge, we can merge these two together. So now they are merged into a geomesh. And what that means is if we shift click on rebuild and we shift drag on the mesh, we can decide our density here. And then now they are merged together, meaning that when we go under move and we start adjusting our shape to create, basically our hypothetical dinosaur, which we'll need symmetry, all right, for this. So let's put it back where we had it. Let's go to object, let's turn on symmetry, and now there we go. Actually, no. All right, so we want to visually symmetrize this mesh because it's just getting out of control. First, we'll symmetrize it, and then we will click on symmetry, and we see that we need symmetry there, but not on the Y. So we have symmetry on the Y, but not on the Z, and that means that now we can get in here and begin sculpting up this mesh. So I just want to end it with me sculpting because, going out and not sculpting makes me look like a loser. But hopefully this demystifies a little bit of some of the fundamentals of how this program works, because I do want to give it a deeper dive as I continue to increase my understanding of the application. But to do that, it does require that spend a little bit of time getting acquainted with it and continuing to read Discord communications between people talking about it, which is probably the easiest way to master something, is just to get in the discussion. Let's go ahead and just turn that off. And we could also put ourselves in ortho and start doing some ortho work, but I really didn't feel there's a need to, because I could be exposing a few nuances that probably aren't worth pointing out due to my lack of understanding. So we're just rebuilding and sculpting and shaping. I'm telling you, the quicker you can get into move, like I would have move map to G, and then it would be game over. You know, that's what it is in Blender, and as a result, it's a proportional move. And proportional move is just that goodness, you know, especially if you're trying to get an organic form. We're just having a little fun here. Being terrible. All right. Told you guys from the beginning I suck. So if you're here expecting me to not suck, I'm only going to suck a little less, but I'm going to at least be a little more competent about it. So we're going to add mesh. We're going to go with quad sphere. And we're just going to place a couple of spheres. And because we selected the new object, just because of how this program behaves, we will just grab that. But we can also add meshes to the original object if we want to. Like, for example, let's go to quad sphere. Let's select our main shape. And under this, we can choose, active node policy. Instead of C node, we just add it to last selected object. And let's see how that works. So, if we look at the outliner, you'll see if a new object's been added by how it shows up. So we're just popping this in here, and because we're a little off the mirror, it just won't work out that way. But it doesn't work out. I mean, it doesn't matter because we can just get the remesh to take care of it. So now we have put a happy little nose on this thing, but we're just continuing on, just messing around with this application. So we can get in here, start messing with the displacement. And usually I will build it up a little bit and then switch it over to be a multi-res mesh. So just keep in mind that you can also work on layers and build things up and procedurally manage them. And this app is also supposed to be getting like PC support or a connection to PC or a PC app. And that is probably going to be exciting, allowing this program to proliferate even further. My policy with it is the same as it was with Substance Painter, where I felt that if you learned the program early before it got complicated, we would have a much easier time in it before they got like really nuts. But really, when they got nuts, they got sold. So Pablo is a different breed. All right, I don't think he'll be selling. All right, I think he's got a type of insanity that I can relate to, and as a result, he's in this for the long haul. Guy's got passion in his heart, fire in his soul. So continuing on, we are going to just continue shaping this guy, just being rough, just having a little fun. And then to end it, we'll go under Deformer Simulation Extend. And if we pull this out, we can start adding just cloth to it. And really in the demo I was doing yesterday for this, I was a little bit further, but I was able to get something like wind and just basically perform a selection around it. And let's try that again. And if we bring this up to the middle, then it won't look like we did anything. And the thing about wind is you just drag it in the direction that you want wind to happen, and the mesh will just behave as if it's wind. So if we just get rid of our selection, we're now back to work, and that's just us just adding a whole ton of detail without a whole lot of effort. And I see some benefit in that, even though this is a really experimental test case that I'm showing. It's not really, I'm not the sculptor that that I portray myself as, or maybe I am. I just need more prep time, like Batman. Whatever the case is, whatever excuse you like, I accept no excuse. I'll just say, I know I suck, but I will do better. I'll keep practicing, and hopefully be able to impress you guys on video. But for that, for now, we will just cut it there. And, I've been in this for an hour and 20 minutes. I apologize for all the time, but I'll just cut it there, and I'll see you guys next time.